I never thought I'd be the kind of person to secretly record someone. But then again, I never thought my father-in-law would corner me in his kitchen and tell me I had bedroom eyes. It started 3 months ago when Marcus and I moved back to his hometown. We'd been living in Seattle for 5 years, building our careers, building our life. But when his mother got sick, really sick, Marcus couldn't bear the thought of being so far away. So we packed up our apartment, said goodbye to the life we'd built, and moved into the guest house behind his parents' property. I loved my mother-in-law, Patricia. She was warm and funny and treated me like the daughter she never had. Stage 4 breast cancer doesn't care about any of that, though. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. Marcus threw himself into helping his mom. He'd spend entire days at the main house, keeping her company during chemo, making sure she ate, just being there. I understood. I did the same when my own father was dying. So I gave him space and tried to make myself useful around the property. That's when Richard started noticing me. At first it was innocent, or at least I told myself it was innocent. He'd compliment my cooking when I brought dinner over. He'd thank me for weeding the garden. Normal things, polite things. The kind of things a father-in-law should say. But then his hand would linger on my shoulder a beat too long. His eyes would travel down when he thought I wasn't looking. The compliments became more personal, more pointed. You look beautiful today, sweetheart. Marcus is a lucky man. If I were 30 years younger, I tried to brush it off. Patricia was dying. Everyone processes grief differently. Maybe Richard was just grasping at anything that felt alive, anything that wasn't about sickness and death. I made excuses for him because the alternative was too awful to consider. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. Patricia had a doctor's appointment in the city, one of those all-day affairs with specialists in scans. Marcus drove her, insisting she shouldn't have to deal with the stress of traffic. They left at 6 in the morning. They wouldn't be back until evening. Richard knew this. Of course he knew this. I was in the guest house, trying to work on a freelance project when I heard the knock. He was holding a toolbox. The sink in the main house is acting up again, he said with that smile that had recently started making my skin crawl. Could you take a look? You're so good with fixing things. I wasn't particularly good with fixing things, but I followed him anyway. What else was I supposed to do? This was Marcus's father. My husband's father. The man who'd welcomed me into his family, who'd given a toast at our wedding about how happy he was that Marcus had found someone like me. The sink was fine. Of course the sink was fine. Must have fixed itself, Richard said, stepping closer to me in the narrow space of the kitchen. But since you're here, maybe you could help me with something else. That's when his hand touched my waist. That's when everything inside me went cold and hot at the same time. Richard, I said, stepping back. Don't what? His voice was light, playful, like we were sharing a joke. I'm just being friendly. This isn't friendly. Come on, sweetheart. You know you've been giving me signals. The way you dress, the way you look at me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But more than anything, I wanted proof. Because I knew what would happen if I told Marcus without proof. Richard would deny it. He'd say I misunderstood. He'd paint me as the crazy attention-seeking daughter-in-law trying to cause problems while his wife was dying. So instead of screaming or running, I said, I need to use the bathroom. I locked myself in the half-bath off the hallway and pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I'd recently downloaded a recording app because I'd been conducting interviews for an article. I opened it, set it to video record, and tucked my phone into the front pocket of my cardigan with the camera lens peeking out. When I came back to the kitchen, Richard was leaning against the counter like he had all the time in the world. Feel better? He asked. Richard, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. He moved closer again. You're a beautiful woman. Patricia, God love her, she's not who she used to be. I have needs. You have needs. Marcus is so busy with his mother. I bet he barely touches you anymore. My stomach turned over. The phone was recording. I needed him to keep talking. This is inappropriate, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm married to your son. What Marcus doesn't know won't hurt him. Richard reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I fought every instinct to flinch away. We could be good together, you and me. I could make you feel appreciated. Stop. I finally stepped back, putting the kitchen island between us. I need you to stop. Playing hard to get? I like that. I'm not playing anything. I'm telling you no. Something shifted in his expression then. The playful mask slipped, and what I saw underneath was uglier. Entitled. Mean. You sure about that? His voice got harder. Because I've been watching you, sweetheart. The way you prance around here in your little outfits. You want attention, and now you're going to act all innocent? I want you to leave me alone. That's not what your body language says. He started moving around the island toward me. That's not what those bedroom eyes say. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'm leaving. Running away? See, this is what I'm talking about. You women, you send all these signals, and then when a man responds, you act like he's the bad guy. I was already heading toward the door. He followed me, still talking, his voice rising. You know what? Forget it. You're not even that attractive. I was just being nice because you're family. But if you're going to be a frigid little... I slammed the door behind me and ran to the guest house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. Once inside, I locked it, threw the deadbolt, and slid down to the floor. The phone was still recording. I stopped it and watched the whole thing back, making sure it had captured everything. It had. His voice, his words, his face as he moved closer to me. All of it. I sat there on the floor for over an hour, just staring at my phone. What was I supposed to do with this? Tell Marcus and destroy him while his mother was dying. Keep it to myself and continue living on this property, seeing Richard every day, pretending nothing happened? There was no good option. That night, when Marcus came home exhausted from the hospital, I couldn't tell him. I watched him collapse onto the couch, saw how drained he looked, and I kept my mouth shut. His mother was dying. His whole world was falling apart. How could I add this to his burden? But I also couldn't pretend. I couldn't go over to the main house for dinner. I couldn't be in the same room with Richard without feeling sick. Marcus noticed. You okay? He asked me a few days later. You seem distant. Just stressed, I lied. Work stuff. He accepted this because he was too tired to push, and I hated myself for lying to him. 2 weeks crawled by. 2 weeks of avoiding the main house, of making excuses, of carrying this poisonous secret. Richard acted like nothing had happened. He'd wave at me from across the yard. He'd ask Marcus how I was doing, playing the concerned father-in-law. It made me want to scream. Then Patricia came home from the hospital. The doctors had sent her home. There was nothing more they could do. She had weeks, maybe a month. She wanted to spend her remaining time surrounded by family, in her own bed, with her own things. Marcus moved into the main house to help care for her. I stayed in the guest house, supposedly to give them space, but really because I couldn't bear to be under the same roof as Richard. Patricia asked for me on a Wednesday afternoon. Marcus came to get me, his eyes red from crying. Mom wants to see you, he said. She's having a good day, and she specifically asked for you. I couldn't say no, not to Patricia. Not when she was dying. She was propped up in her bed, looking small and frail, but with that same spark in her eyes. She smiled when she saw me. There's my girl, she said, patting the bed next to her. I've missed you. Where have you been hiding? Just trying to give you all some space, I said, sitting carefully on the edge of the mattress. Space? She laughed, which turned into a cough. Honey, I'm dying. I don't need space. I need my family around me. We talked for a while about small things, pleasant things. She told me stories about Marcus as a child. She made me promise to make sure he took care of himself after she was gone. She held my hand with fingers that felt like bird bones. You're good for him, she said quietly. You make him happy. Richard and I were so grateful you're part of this family. The mention of Richard's name made my throat tighten. I looked at this woman, this kind, dying woman, and I thought about what her husband had done. What he'd said to me. How he was betraying her even as she lay here fighting for every breath. She deserved to know. But how could I tell her? How could I burden a dying woman with her husband's betrayal? I couldn't. But maybe I didn't have to tell her. Maybe I could tell someone else. That evening, after Marcus had fallen asleep in the chair next to his mother's bed, I went back to the guest house and looked at the video again. I'd watched it dozens of times over the past 2 weeks, each viewing making me feel sicker than the last. I thought about Patricia, about how much she deserved better. I thought about Marcus, about how he deserved to know what kind of man his father really was. I thought about myself, about how I couldn't keep living like this, carrying this secret, feeling unsafe in my own home. I made a decision. The next day, I went into town and bought a small projector, the kind you can use to watch movies on a wall. I told Marcus I'd gotten it as a surprise, that I thought it might be nice for his mom to watch some of her favorite films in bed. He thought it was a thoughtful idea. I set it up in Patricia's room that afternoon, projecting onto the blank wall across from her bed. We watched Singing in the Rain, one of her favorites. She smiled through most of it, even sang along to a few songs in a thin whisper voice. Richard came in and out, playing the devoted husband. He brought Patricia water. He adjusted her pillows. He kissed her forehead. Every gesture made me feel like I was choking. That night, Patricia asked if we could do another movie night the next day. Of course, I said. Whatever you want. Maybe we could make it a family thing, she suggested. All of us together. How often do we get to do that anymore? Marcus agreed immediately. Richard nodded, smiling that smile I'd grown to hate. Sounds perfect, he said. I smiled back. Perfect. The next evening, we all gathered in Patricia's room. Marcus sat on one side of her bed, holding her hand. Richard sat on the other side. I sat in a chair near the projector, my laptop connected to it, my phone connected to my laptop. What are we watching tonight? Patricia asked. I looked at Richard. He was looking at his wife, stroking her hair. The picture of a caring husband. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I made a little home video. I thought it might be nice to watch. Oh, how sweet, Patricia said. Marcus smiled at me. You're always doing thoughtful things like that. I clicked play. For a moment, there was just the ceiling of the kitchen in the main house. Then the camera shifted, and there I was, my face filling the frame. Feel better? Richard's voice came through the speakers. Marcus frowned. What is this? On the screen, I was speaking. Richard, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. You're a beautiful woman. Patricia, God love her, she's not who she used to be. The room went completely silent. On screen, Richard was saying he had needs. That I had needs. That Marcus barely touched me anymore. I watched Marcus's face. Watched the confusion turn to understanding. Understanding turned to horror. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Richard shot to his feet. Turn that off. Turn that off right now. But I didn't turn it off. I let it play, let them hear every word. Let them watch as he touched my hair, as he propositioned me, as he called me frigid when I rejected him. When it finished, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was crushing. Marcus looked at his father with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure, devastating betrayal. Patricia was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Richard's face had gone from red to white. She's lying. She edited that. I have the original file, I said quietly. Timestamped. I have the metadata. I have everything. You're insane. Richard spat, turning on me with genuine hatred now. You're a manipulative, attention-seeking. Get out. Patricia's voice was weak, but filled with a fury I didn't know a dying woman could possess. Get out of my house. Patricia, honey, please. Get out of my house or I'll call the police right now. Her voice cracked, and she started coughing. The effort of yelling too much for her failing lungs. Marcus was at her side immediately, helping her breathe, shooting his father a look that could kill. Dad, Marcus said, his voice shaking. Get out. Now. You're going to believe her over me? I'm your father. I said get out. Marcus roared. Richard looked around the room, at his dying wife, at his son, at me. He saw no allies here, no sympathy, just disgust. "Fine," he said. "Fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize what kind of person she really is." He stormed out. We heard him thundering down the stairs, heard the front door slam. In the silence that followed, Patricia was sobbing. Marcus was holding her, tears streaming down his own face. And I sat there, trembling, wondering if I'd done the right thing or just made everything so much worse. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." I didn't know what else to do. Patricia reached out a shaking hand toward me. I went to her, and she grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Don't you dare apologize," she said fiercely. "Don't you dare. You did exactly what you should have done." "Mom, you need to rest," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "No," she looked at him. "No, I need to say this. I need her to hear this." She turned back to me. "Thank you. Thank you for showing me who he really is before I died, thinking I'd just spent 50 years with a man who loved me." "He does love you," I said, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. "No." She closed her eyes. "He loves himself. That's all he's ever loved. I just couldn't see it. Or maybe I could, and I just didn't want to." The next few hours were a blur. Patricia asked us to call her lawyer. She wanted to change her will immediately. She didn't want Richard to get anything. A hospice nurse came to check on her, worried that the stress had been too much. Patricia insisted she was fine, that she'd never felt clearer about anything in her life. Richard came back late that night, drunk, pounding on the door and yelling. Marcus called the police. They took Richard away, told him he needed to stay somewhere else for the night. Patricia filed for a restraining order the next morning. Even from her deathbed, she was fierce. She died 6 days later. The funeral was tense. Richard showed up despite the restraining order, but he stayed far away from us. He looked like he'd aged a decade in a week. Part of me felt sorry for him. Part of me still wanted to scream. After the funeral, after the lawyers and the estate settlement, after all the horrible logistics of death, Marcus and I moved back to Seattle. We couldn't stay in that house, on that property. There were too many ghosts. On the plane, Marcus took my hand. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. You couldn't have known. I should have seen it. The way he was looking at you. The way you started avoiding the house. I should have seen it. You were taking care of your mom. That's what you were supposed to be doing." He was quiet for a while, looking out the window at the clouds below. "Mom told me something," he said finally. "The night after you showed the video. She said she'd always worried about him, about the way he looked at other women. She said she'd confronted him a few times over the years about behavior that made her uncomfortable. He always made her feel like she was being paranoid, overly jealous." "Marcus," she said, "she was glad you recorded it. Not just for you, but for her. Because it meant she wasn't crazy. It meant her instincts had been right all along." I thought about Patricia, about how she'd spent 50 years with a man who made her doubt herself, about how she died knowing the truth but also carrying the pain of that truth. "I wish I could have told her differently," I said. "Not while she was dying. She deserved better than that. She deserved better than him," Marcus said. "We all did. It's been 6 months now. We're rebuilding our life in Seattle. Marcus is in therapy, working through the betrayal and the grief. I'm in therapy too, dealing with the guilt and the fear that somehow I brought this on myself. My therapist keeps telling me I did nothing wrong, that I didn't lead Richard on, that his behavior was his choice, not a result of anything I did. Most days I believe her. Some days, I still hear his voice in my head, calling me frigid, saying I'd sent signals. Those days are harder. People ask me sometimes if I regret showing the video. If I wish I'd handled it differently, told Marcus privately, not exposed everyone to such a brutal truth. I don't know how to answer that. Because yes, it was brutal. Yes, it destroyed Patricia's last days in some ways. Yes, it tore apart a family. But it also freed her from a lie. It protected me. It showed Marcus who his father really was before it was too late, Before there were grandchildren Richard could manipulate, before more damage could be done. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. Sometimes the truth is a knife that cuts everyone in the room, including yourself. I pressed record that day because I needed proof. I played the video because I needed truth. I did what I had to do to survive, to protect myself in a situation where I felt powerless. Would I do it again? Yes, 1,000 times yes. But I also know I'll carry this with me forever. The look on Patricia's face, the sound of her crying, the way Marcus's world shattered in that moment. We don't talk to Richard anymore. He's tried to reach out a few times, claiming he was just joking, that I misunderstood, that he never would have actually done anything. Always the same excuses, always blaming me. We don't respond. Late at night when I can't sleep, I sometimes think about alternate timelines. What if I hadn't recorded? What if I just told Marcus and hoped he believed me? What if I'd kept silent, let Patricia die thinking her husband was faithful, let Richard get away with it? In those alternate timelines, would I be happier? Would I be safer? Or would I just be carrying a different kind of burden? I'll never know. All I know is that I'm here, I survived. I told the truth, even though the truth was ugly and painful and destroyed people I loved. And somehow, impossibly, I'm learning to live with that. Marcus is next to me on the couch right now, reading. He looks over and smiles, and in that smile I see forgiveness. Not for his father, but for me, for the choice I made, for the pain I couldn't prevent. You okay? He asks. Yeah, I say. And for the first time in months, I almost mean it. Yeah, I think I am. Because here's what I've learned. You can't protect everyone. You can't prevent all pain. Sometimes the truth is a bomb, and all you can do is be honest about who lit the fuse. Richard lit that fuse, not me. And I refuse to carry his blame anymore.